All right. All right. Welcome, everybody. Explore with Casey podcast. I'm super excited for my guest today. Actually, a little bit nervous. I was meditating coming into this session, and I was thinking, wow, this is actually a big guest. I'm lucky enough to call this person a friend and a mentor, and I've gotten to know this person. But stepping back a little bit as I was preparing for this podcast, I was getting a little bit nervous because this is a big thing for me. This person has had a big impact on my life and on my journey as well. So I'm really excited to have this person here with me today. Now, Steffen, do my best to drop a little bit of German accent in there. Steffen Ki is my guest today. And Steffen is a musician, amongst other things. I mean, he's just a magical human being that I'm lucky enough to have gotten into contact with over the last couple of years and become friends with. And he's just, man, I don't know. I'm having a hard time putting into words, but he's got so many skills and so many talents in the world of music and in just frequency and he's just a meditative person like myself, enjoys spending time in the jungle and just really deeply connected with nature, which I really respect and really admire. And so we have a lot to get into today with Steffen. We want to talk about music and the healing power of music specifically, because it's really helped me with anxiety, with depression, and with some of the things that I've dealt with. And so we want to get into Steffen's story. Yeah, that's about it, man. So everybody, welcome Steffen Ki to the podcast today. Hello, Steffen.
Hello, Casey. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for this beautiful introduction. And on that note, I also want to mention that you also had a big impact on my journey, at least in the recent 2 years or since I know you. And maybe we can get into that a little bit deeper when we talk about the academy. But yeah, I just want to also let the people know that also you had a profound impact on my life, and I wouldn't be where I am right now if it weren't for you and your guidance in that moment in history.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you, man. Yeah, it was beautiful to connect at an early point. Steffen was starting off his community. I was a big fan of Steffen's music and was looking to start to make my own music and get more into that process, and was really surprised. I was like, wow, here's somebody that I'm a fan of that's also offering some tutorials. At first it was just some tutorials you were putting out online, and then you started to do some one-on-one stuff, and then you were opening up an academy where people could learn with you. And I jumped right in. I was like, hey man, I'm all in. As soon as I saw the video, I joined in, and it was a big part of my journey in learning how to make music. So let's go back a little bit. And how did you get into making music? Where was your first step into the musical world?
Yeah. I've been kind of excited and passionate about music ever since, in a sense. So like music was always a big thing for me, even though I had no musical training or anyone in the family who was playing an instrument or something like that. But I just always felt really at home in listening to music. Like already as a child and as a teenager, I was spending a lot of time listening to music and immersing myself in music. And then when I was 16, I started to play electric guitar in a grunge school band. And at this point, I was pretty puristic, saying, that electronic music is not handmade and it's not music, until I had my revelation with drum and bass when I was 19. And then I got into electronic music, and then I started dabbling around, like my friends that were super also into FX Twin and IDM and stuff like that. So we were trying different music softwares like Reason, Fruity Loops. Like I think the first one was Fruity Loops. And then I got into Reason and Cubase. And then I discovered Ableton when I was 19. And I was also like super fascinated with synthesizers. And I read a book about synthesizers. And yeah, I just felt like this innate excitement and passion for it, But I was also growing up with this belief, and my parents like affirmed that a couple of times, that music is not something to aspire to. Like this is for the select few. That's not something that you have a solid income with. And so, yeah, I had to study something. So I studied social work because that was pretty interesting to me. And I liked to get to know more about the human psyche and stuff like that. But actually, during that time at university, I was just studying Ableton, really, because at this point, there was nothing out there yet. There was one book about Ableton, which is music production software for those of you who don't know. And YouTube was just cats and fail videos pretty much, so there were no tutorials and I had to learn everything, the hard way, trial and error. There were no teachers around, at least not in my area. So yeah, every free minute I had at university, I spent with Ableton, and I noticed, man, I can do this forever, like there was just something about it. And yeah, so I was always passionate about music, and then got passionate about making music, especially electronic organic music, like mixing kind of organic sounds with electronic sounds. And yeah, this is how it started basically. And then I had some decent success when I was a social worker. I was making music on the side, and I had my first vinyl release and started to play some shows also together with Christian Löffler, who's my mentor, who's pretty famous by now and who's making amazing music, who had a big impact on my journey as a friend, but also as a mentor, and also what he put out. Like his music was so beautiful and so beautifully emotionally touching that I felt I want to create something similar. So then I aspired to kind of do something that has a similar emotional impact on myself and on people. And it was also a sanctuary for me, already talking about the healing aspect, right? As a social worker, you have quite some challenging situations to process, like you come across like abusive parents and traumatized children and, stuff like that, and on a daily basis. So music was always also at this time a sanctuary for me to retreat into and to create a world that is kind of whole and perfect and beautiful, and something that I always knew deep in my heart existed as a potential, and I created those worlds for me. And so yeah, this is how it started. And but then I always had to be with that belief that I cannot live off of music, right? So I became a social worker in the end, until I got burned out and depressed. And then I was at a point where I had nothing to lose. And I was also living in a community at this point. So there was a lot of challenges. Some could say it was the dark night of the soul in a sense. I was super lost and in a super desperate state, and no life juice at all. And at this point, I felt, okay, I have nothing to lose. And I either end this life now, or I just start doing what I want to do, moment by moment by moment, until the rest of my life, And this is when the big shift happened. I was like, okay, when I want to make music, I make music. When I'm tired, I'm sleeping. When I'm hungry, I'm eating. That's it. That's all I needed to know at this point. So low I was, right? But then the life force came back to me, and it was like super nurturing, and it was like breathing again. I was almost like choking myself by not being creative, not making music, which I knew deep inside was what I always wanted to do, but always, coming across those beliefs and ideas that this is not the way, although I knew it was. And then finally doing it, and only doing it because I was so desperate and I had nothing to lose in that sense. And then I discovered the magic of it, of this kind of life when you are fully immersed in your passion, And this is when everything shifted completely. I always say I like this kind of phoenix moment, like this led me eventually to have my first cacao ceremony in Berlin at an event called The Dawn, funny enough. And this was just mind-blowing and heart-opening, like crazy. I didn't even know this existed, this kind of music. It was very kind of spiritual, shamanic, down-tempo music that I had never heard until this point. I didn't even know this existed. And I always wanted people to be on a deep journey with my music, but I was playing in clubs before, like nightclubs, and people were drunk and on drugs and always asked me to play harder and faster and louder, and it's like, man, what am I doing here? But then I realized, wow, there's people actually on a dance floor, they're sober, they pray and they meditate and they chant. And I was like, wow, I'm in heaven, man, And then I discovered this transformative power of music once again on a very deep level, on a spiritual level, in a sense. Now I really experience the potential of music as a healer in a sense, because those frequencies, let's call them, that were in the music, like this shamanic singing and the nature sounds and all the stuff. This was like South American folkloric electronic music, right? So it was like music from Peru, Chile, South America in general, which are very, like traditional roots, and pretty connected to nature, and also like having cultures like shamanism and things like that. And I just felt my soul yearning, for this kind of experiences and energy. So I started to immerse myself in this music. I was soaking it up like a sponge, because now I had the time. Like everything I did was listening to music and making music. And there was so much to discover, like down tempo. It was in 2017, was pretty new still. It is still underground in a sense, but it has evolved so much. There's so many releases and artists right now. But at this point, it was super new and super exciting. And I was exploring everything. And at the same time, I was feeling the call of the jungle already, and so I started to make music that was what I imagined it to be, how that would feel, being in the jungle, being in the ceremony, being with shamans and things, and so I was visualizing and trying to find sounds and music that matches this. And it was such a good moment of experiencing the resonance to this music, and I finally felt home, always trying to be someone, always trying to fit in, always trying to fulfill expectations. But then finally in the music, I did what I loved and people liked it. I was like, oh, wow, finally, that feels like home. I arrived somewhere. Finally, I feel like, okay, I have a purpose. There's a sense to my existence, and what I do actually touches people. And yeah, and I had a huge output, because I didn't make music for such a long time. I created a track a week. I was so excited. Music was all I could think about. And so I was listening and making music nonstop. And in a very short amount of time, I had a lot of releases. And then, like I realized also the power of manifestation gets so much stronger when you're actually aligned. Because things happened so quickly. Like I thought about something and then it happened. For instance, I thought I was listening to a certain label that released music that I really liked. And I was like, wow, that would be amazing if I could release there. And a month later, I had a release on there. People were reaching out to me via SoundCloud and stuff. And then I saw this festival called Festival Nomade, which was kind of the holy grail of downtempo for me. Like all the big quote unquote artists of this South American downtempo scene, they were there. And I was thinking like, wow, I would love to play there one day, like thinking maybe in 2 years, if I'm like successful enough, like that will be a dream come true. 6 months later, I got a message from the organizers and they said, like your music sounds pretty South American and pretty shamanic, and we feel that resonates a lot with what we are doing, and we want to invite you to come to Colombia,
Wow.
And then yeah, I was like, sure, like feeling like the jungle calling me, and always immersing myself in sounds that mirror the jungle, and always, focusing on that. So I would say already this set me up in a sense, right? This was magic right there, because I immersed myself in sounds, and this is the power of sound as a program already, right? Because I was like infused with those frequencies. Like this was all I was listening to. This was all I was thinking about: the jungle, shamans, ceremonies, ritual, nature. And and then 6 months later, I was invited to play at the festival. It was so surreal seeing my name on the lineup with all my heroes, and then I got to meet them all. And the most amazing thing, I got to meet my partner also, which is a whole nother magical story, how we met and how that all, I don't know if we have time for that, but basically in a nutshell, since I started to follow my excitement, like without any compromise, like never ever doing anything again until this day that has nothing to do with music, or let's say that is not in alignment with my passion, man, my life changed 180 degrees. I thought it was over, but then, it's like this rubber band. I went so deep into the darkness, like lost myself so completely. But then I actually created so much momentum for when I finally let go and finally do what I actually want to do, finally listening to my heart and not giving a shit what others say. I was catapulted back into total expansion, and it's never ending. Like even at this point, I thought I have an amazing life, but now, like 5 years later, it's beyond even. It's such an amazing journey that is unfolding since that moment where I decided, fuck it, I'm just gonna make music now. I don't give a shit. And yeah, wow. So very powerful.
I love it.
And yeah,
It's such an inspiring story, especially I love the cacao ceremony kick things off.
yeah,
Me,
man, exactly.
I
There's
love
so
that
so
part.
much
And
gratitude to the mama for sure.
going from the depths, I love that. It's a true hero story. It's I love the hero story. I love the hero's journey. And it's really, it's one of the I heard a little bit of it, but this was a little bit more of the story that I got to get to hear of. And I heard some of it before, and it was always inspiring to me. I love the hero story, and your story is just amazing. It's so magical, and it's so inspiring to me to, I'm all about following passions and following the dreams and stuff like that. And you're a living, breathing example of that. And so having you around in my life and being a mentor to me and an influence to me has really inspired me to keep going in that direction. And it's your story is really magical. And so let's talk a little bit more about that magic that you've been
Mm-hmm.
creating, and how that happens, and how that, the frequencies, the vibrations of it, let's get into the mystical side of this. I love that
Yeah,
part of it. So
likewise, bro. I get goosebumps. I love it. Like if there's anything else in my life beside music, it's metaphysics, right?
mhm.
And it's all tied together in the end because at the core of it, everything is frequency and vibration, right? And this is why music and sound is so powerful because our whole existence is based on consciousness and energy vibrating at a certain frequency. And so everything has a frequency, every thought, every word, every emotion. And um, the idea is that we are living kind of like in a holographic mirror reality, like what we call physical reality is actually a projection of our consciousness that is mirroring our vibration, our frequency, which is made up of our thoughts and our beliefs and our state of being. So there's this idea of alignment, right? And then being out of alignment, or like being in harmonic resonance and being in discordant resonance or negative resonance. And resonance being the phenomena that basically it means to make something sound, right? So sound is at the um, root of everything. It's like at the beginning was the word, like all those ancient mystical traditions, they were talking about that and they were seeing the power of sound. And even, there's like beliefs that ancient cultures, they were working with sounds on levels that are way beyond our comprehension at this point, like using sound for levitation and creating stuff like the pyramids and all kinds of things. So yeah, sound is a very powerful phenomenon. And so you can combine sound and music in a way, so the properties of sound on a metaphysical level, which is basically informing things, right? You can work with sound as information, and this is where it becomes medicine. So when we talk about medicine and healing, for me healing stems from wholeness, right? Oneness, completion, a state of harmonic resonance, being in alignment with our essence. And I believe that the universe is at its fundamental core harmonic, uh, harmonious and beautiful, right? And you see that if you look in nature, like this is why I love nature so much. It's a manifestation, it's a physical expression of those divine proportions and principles, like sacred geometry in action. And this is also why it's so healing in a sense, like nature and nature sounds and everything that is derived from those proportions and ideas is because it's reflecting this state of completion and oneness and wholeness and alignment and harmony and beauty. And in nature still everything is in alignment, right? So everything you encounter there is reminding you of your innate beauty and your innate perfection and your innate harmony. This is where you come from. And we have free will as humans, and we can decide to go against that. We can resist that, and we can create, the experience of getting out of alignment and getting into negative vibrations, because we are on this dualistic plane of experience. And this serves many purposes for the soul growth and experience, and for souls to experience itself. But we still have the choice, right? And so now that we know that, we can choose to get back into alignment, and we can see the beauty and perfection in nature, and we can work with those principles in order to heal ourselves, in order to reprogram, retune, reattune with the innate cosmic divine blueprint that is beauty and perfection at its core, right? So yeah, sound
And
as
that's
an
where my experience came in, was, feeling like, hey, what's going on with me? I'm struggling with anxiety, and this is something, that I struggled with for a long time in my life, but started to realize that it was it was due to the environment that I was living in, right? The environment I grew up in, the city environment, and just the food that I was eating, all this stuff that was so unnatural. And so
mhm,
returning back to natural states has been a part of my healing journey, has helped me feel better mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all that stuff. And so let's talk a little bit more about that, because your music really incorporates a lot of the natural elements, and that's what really drew me to it. In one of our first sessions, when you were mentoring me, you were like, okay, well, let's look at this track from a elemental level. Let's start with some water, and and so I really
mhm,
enjoyed that. And so let's talk about the elemental nature and the natural elements that you incorporate into your music, and how that
mhm,
that really helps facilitate that healing effect that
mhm.
you bring with your music.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful aspect of the whole process. And that's exactly how I start. Whenever I start creating a track or like a journey or something, I always start out with nature sounds, because they all have their own, properties and positive beneficial effects. And for instance, water, when you mention it, it's helping us, to get more connected with our emotional
Mhm.
landscape. It can also be cleansing. It can move stuck energy, right? So water is always very crucial in my tracks. I think I have it in every track. There's some water flowing just for that purpose. And then also, the sounds of birds are also like really important to me, because they represent like the joy, and the unconditional love. Like they just sing their heart out every day. And I also believe that the songs of the birds, or like any animal making any sound, is also tied into this total alignment, and it's an expression of joy and of honoring, like the existence. But also it can help us, to feel more relaxed and feel more at peace and feel more joyful. So for
A
me,
quick side
it's
note on that. I don't know where I heard this from, but I heard that when when they first discovered America, I hate using that term, but when they first were coming over to America and they were taking these long journeys on the boats, and they're one of the things that made these people go crazy when they were on the boat for so long is they were out in the middle of the ocean and they didn't hear any bird sounds for months
mm,
on end. And so they said that once they got closer to shore and they started hearing bird sounds, they started coming back to sort of normal.
mm,
But being away from being in silence, without nature sounds, without animal sounds, was actually part of what made people go mad on these boats for so long. Just quick side, I don't know if
wow.
there's any truth to that. I don't even remember where I heard that from, but that always stuck with me. And so since then, it's like, yeah, I want to be around more nature sounds, more bird sounds,
Yeah,
because when I'm in a city and I don't hear any of that, I do kind of start going mad. So just a quick
yeah.
side note on that.
Wow, that's interesting. I never heard that, but that, yeah, I can totally imagine that being the case. And maybe it's even like anchoring us and grounding us in a sense. Maybe it's also connected to the electromagnetic field in a sense. But yeah, that's really interesting. So yeah, for me, like it's a huge inspiration also. Like for me to get in the mood of creating, I put these sounds first, and then things start to come from there, right? So you could also say it is also kind of like a devotional act, or like a prayer of sorts to express gratitude for that, but also work with that, like share that vibration, share that frequency. A lot of the stuff are field recordings that I made in the beautiful places that I was lucky enough, to live in. like the jungle of Costa Rica, or like the Lake Atitlan in Guatemala, or Bali, or whatever, like, all these beautiful sanctuaries. And so, yeah, they play a huge part in the creative process. And then everything is created around that to mirror that state of beauty and harmony and perfection and peace and serenity. Um, so I try to be as organic as possible in my productions as well. Like I try to find organic sources, native instruments, and yeah, just to have this organic as possible expression and journey, because I find like everything is frequency again, right? So if you use natural stuff, and I'm not against technology and electronics, absolutely not. I love it. It's my instrument. If somebody's asking me what instrument are you playing, I was like, yeah, I'm playing my computer with Ableton. I can play any instrument on that, within that, right? But still there's a difference to it if you use like a shamanic drum or like a shaker, that has some seeds of nature. Like it's all like those frequencies that are triggering the innate knowledge of our connection with nature. And I think that's one of the biggest downfalls, or not downfalls, let's say our disconnection of nature that we chose to experience led to where we are, or where, let's say, we're shifting away from that. But so I think reconnecting with nature is definitely one answer to the question, how can we change for the better, or how can we create a better life, right? Is reconnecting with it. So the music I'm doing is kind of a bridge for that as well. It's creating this bridge, especially for people at this point who don't really are fortunate enough to be so much immersed in nature. And then the frequencies that I soak in when I'm in nature, I try to put in the music. And I have a new album coming out soon. It's called Mother, and it's basically a love letter to nature, and especially to Costa Rica, because it was created in Costa Rica. And I just used my templates for that, which we can maybe get to at some point. And all those templates were created in Costa Rica in nature, right? So yeah, this is what me and my partner with our project Aluna try to open the portals again for this connection with nature, being a voice for nature as well, like especially my partner channeling the plant spirits and all the prayer songs that she's doing.
Yeah, and I love that. I love the bridge analogy. And so I want to touch on that a little bit more, because I really did see your music as a bridge, because yeah, there's a lot of organic, very natural elements, but yet there's also something very futuristic about it. And the way you use frequencies and vibrations and the technology that you have at hand to help facilitate some of this reconnection with nature is really fascinating to me, and it's really inspired me and influenced me a lot in the music that I create, that I use for my ceremonies, for my meditations, and that I create as well. So let's talk a little bit more about that, about bridging that, because there's one thing about the reconnection and like you mentioned, the tribal nature that we're returning back to, but there's also, I want to talk a little bit about the height of technology, about the frequencies that can heighten this experience, and that this technology is giving us the opportunity to be able to incorporate into that kind of music. So let's touch upon that a little bit. Let's bridge the future a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so basically, with the technology at hand that we have, we can facilitate very powerful experiences, because we can create a frequency on the push of a button, basically, right? So we have devices now, like, synthesizers, oscillators, whatever, that you can type in any frequency and then have that frequency inform you or creating a certain effect, and this goes into very varied realms. Like you could talk about, for instance, binaural beats, which is brainwave entrainment, right? Which is a very fascinating phenomena where you can basically support the brain to get into a more meditative state, or into a more peaceful state, or into a healing state, based on the frequency. And I tried to research as much as I could about all those different frequencies that are out there. And like for the brain waves, it's pretty clearly mapped out. And then there's more metaphysical, more esoteric stuff, which I'm also super interested in. And I always try, when I learn something about those, to make it practically applicable within my field of expertise, which is music production or music creation, right? So when I hear about a frequency, I try it out and I try to make something practical out of it. So binaural beats is one good example. Same goes for isochronic tones. So for binaural beats, you need headphones because the phenomena is like a neuronal oscillation that happens in the brain between the difference of what the left and the right ear are perceiving. And the difference is then the binaural beat that then helps the brain to be entrained in that state, which can create deeper relaxation, healing, meditative states, which is super powerful. And I love to work with that. And isochronic tones are basically just a pulse. So you could listen to it on speakers also. You don't need really the headphones, and the brain will entrain to that pulse. So, but then there's other stuff, like for instance, the idea of the cosmic octave, which is also the principle of aligning with the cosmos. Like you could expand nature to the cosmos as well. It's not just Earth and the plants, and that's a big part of it, but you could also expand it to the cosmos. And then there's this idea that the movements of planets are happening on a musical relationship, and that they're actually having an effect, or they can have an effect if we attune ourselves to them, to balance our energy systems. For instance, there was this amazing researcher and musicologist, Hans Cousteau from Switzerland, and he had this epiphany one day with the help of the mushroom teachers, that he, because he was into Kepler, and into Pythagoras and this idea of the harmony of the spheres, which was the idea already, there is music, and some people who are clairaudient, they actually perceive that, the music of the spheres, so they can hear, and in altered states, you can also tune into that. So it's not a frequency we can perceive with our ears, but with our inner ears, we can listen to the harmony of the spheres. And he was tuned into that, and he tried to make it applicable. And then the mushrooms told him about the idea of the cosmic octave, which basically, if you have the movement of a planet, then you have a certain frequency, like the speed of the rotation, you can express in a frequency. And if you octave that up into a range that we can actually hear, you end up with a tone. And if you have that tone, then you have a key. If you have a key, you have a pitch. And so basically the idea is that there's different movements of planets that resonate with different chakras. And I have friends in Berlin who are working with those ideas. And the first time I experienced it was around my, Phoenix moment with the cacao ceremonies. Was pretty close to that. I was listening to their music, which is cosmically tuned based on those principles. And I felt like a galaxy myself, like my body completely transcended. And I was not, like, there was no end and no beginning, and to where, I am. And that was pretty profound. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And then I started to get deeper into that, especially with COVID, when we stopped touring and there were no events happening, and we were all going through this chrysalis phase. And I started to shift away a little bit from the down tempo, getting more into ambient and sound healing and sound journeys, and focusing on creating tools for people to facilitate that, to use our technology in order to help us heal and attune with those vibrations, and in order to uplift our consciousness and expand our consciousness and activate the dormant potential in our DNA. That's another thing, talking about solfeggio frequencies, for instance, right? There's a lot of controversy about those things. But what is interesting is also that in the end, it doesn't really matter what is true. What really matters for the listener is their belief, like the placebo effect that some people call it. It's very strong. If you listen to something with a certain belief that it will create an effect, then with your magical powers that you have, your mind over matter powers, you will create that effect. And at the same time, if there's a lot of people buying into this idea and nurturing this idea, entertaining it with their thoughts and therefore giving it energy, they create a field, a very powerful field. And if there's 1 million people out there believing that the solfeggio frequencies having benefits on their body and soul, then it doesn't even really matter which frequencies they are. It matters the belief, because they tune into that field that has been nurtured with everybody listening to it with that expectation and creating that sensation. And yet there's a lot of interesting research out there. If you dig deeper, you'll find fascinating things about the solfeggio frequencies, going as far as they say those are the frequencies of creation. In a sense, it's keyed into a matrix. It's keyed into vortex-based mathematics, which is basically describing how energy flows in a toroidal field, which basically everything is a toroidal field, right? From the microcosmos to the macrocosmos. And the solfeggio frequencies are a means of describing this phenomena, and then we can tap into it. And some researchers believe that the walls of Jericho were brought down with solfeggio frequencies. So they can be constructive and they can be destructive. And then the power of intention comes in, which is super important in the creative process. If you work with those frequencies, you wield a powerful energy, and your intentions are really powerful. And I think there were a lot of examples also where sound was used in a destructive context. But if you use it with a powerful, positive, beautiful, healing intention, this will be imprinted in your music, because sound waves are carrier waves for intention, right? So on a metaphysical level, people will feel that it will carry that vibration and frequency. So yeah, so with all those frequencies, I try to create tools that people can then use in Ableton. I create templates and also sound journeys and live performances with those frequencies. And the feedback we got is pretty amazing. Like, especially like we did this planetary chakra healing template, right? Which is basically a template that has sounds for each chakra, like from the root chakra to the crown chakra, which was a lot of work because they all have to have different tunings and different BPMs, and we were recording singing bowls and crystal bowls and tuning forks. And then I created all those soundscapes and layers. And but people have an amazing experience. Like the facilitators who work with it, they say the people felt profound shifts in their energy. They felt super calm, or felt like they were on a deep journey, And so, yeah, I think we're just at the beginning of realizing how powerful sound is. And I think in the next 20 to 30 years, like, sound will be one of the main tools that we use for healing and for expansion of technology and frequencies in general. Frequency and vibration, sound being one expression of that, one super powerful, because it's pretty immediate, right? So yeah, it's very, very exciting times we are in, and sound is a very powerful tool to help us shift in an easier way, I would say, because it can help us to integrate the energies better. It can help us release energies. It can assist us in anything. And even myself, if I listen to solfeggio frequencies, for instance, like let's say the 528 hertz frequency is in particular, like we did a sound journey about that. Whenever I feel out of whack, out of alignment, I listen to that 1 hour, half an hour, just laying down, listen to it, everything shifted, like you feel everything falls back into place. And this is the thing about the entrainment, or like about the resonance, like the higher frequency will always shift the lower frequency. So whatever lower state you're in, if you're listening to a higher frequency music, or like if you come across a higher frequency, that will always shift the lower frequency, right? So this is why it is so powerful. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious that music and sound is powerful. I mean, you can see it all around the world. I mean, it's just been used for so long for, for ill purposes. Sound has taken our society in certain ways that are just not what we, you and I, people like you and I that are into meditation and self-enlightenment and these sort of things, and in our own progression, our own growth, we use sound in a different way than the masses. And when we see it on the mass scale, the very bass heavy, sound that permeates the pop culture and these sort of things, and leads society down this path that we're in now. And sound is very powerful. It gets thousands and millions of people together at certain points, and can draw people together. We've seen that happen, and it's part of the reason that drew me to music. When I was a teenager and I wanted to of course, sound was very healing to me. It was always a part of my journey. but really, wanting to be in a crowd of people dancing to the same music was something that was really transformative to me, and really felt tribal to be out in the middle of the night around, some dim lights and loud music, and just dancing, like nobody's watching. And to me, that was a very
Mm-hmm.
cathartic experience. It was something very tribal to me. And so I experienced
Mm-hmm.
the power of sound. It's just, sound has power. And like you said, it's all about how we use it. And so tuning ourselves in, and some of the things that we're talking about are more subtle. And to me, as a meditator, as a yogi, subtlety is where it's at. And that's where the true power is. It's just a lot of people aren't tuned
Mm-hmm.
into that, and
Totally.
we talked about tuning ourselves and surrendering to those sounds, surrendering to the vibrations, surrendering to it, believing in it, allowing yourself to believe in, hey, this can have a positive impact on me. Let me just sit down, put some headphones on, and just close my eyes for half an hour and try it out, and believe
Mm-hmm.
it's going to have an impact. And
Mm-hmm.
that belief is the seed that can then be fed by these sounds that can grow into something. And I've experienced the benefit of binaural beats, isochronic tones, solfeggio frequencies, all these things that you're talking about. I've experienced these benefits firsthand and try and incorporate them into things I do. And so what have been some of your experiences with these? I mean, you mentioned a little bit about, you being able to put those on, and, if you're feeling out of tune or something like that, you put that on. But on the bigger picture scale, what have some of these frequencies, vibrations, all of that done for you in your life? I mean, we'll talk about bringing this in to a tribe perspective as well, because, I want to start to get into the sonic wizards and everything that you're
Mm-hmm.
creating with your online community that I jumped in right from the beginning. Haven't had much of a
Mm-hmm.
time haven't had much time recently to be involved in, but it's growing so much. And this is, I'm a big fan of the vibe attracts the tribe. And that really seems to
Mm-hmm.
resonate with what you're doing. So let's talk a little bit about that, about how these frequencies have helped you. And then that has then planted the seed for expansion of drawing in other people that are working with these frequencies. And now this sound that was very small in the beginning and very subtle is now starting to become more powerful, when now you've got people from all over the world working with these same sounds, same frequencies, and all this stuff, and the healing effect that's starting to happen out in the real world. Let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful. So yeah, I basically started when I got researching and experienced those frequencies on a deeper level. I felt like, wow, there's no information out there on how to create music that is tuned to that, or there are no tools really that people can use, So I started to making those tutorials, and then I like on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, Sonic Sorcery. And then people started to reach out to me, and they were giving me good feedback. And then this idea came up with, because I was teaching before already, right? Like just music production. But then I was like, okay, so what about creating like some sort of school or container where we focus on just that, right? So, and this was the idea of the Academy for Sonic Sorcery, in which you played a big part in guiding me, in a sense, because I was always a bit hesitant and reluctant towards the idea of marketing. I was not really aware of this idea of the hero's journey, and I was, when I see marketing, always I see, or like a lot of times I see manipulation, I feel.
Mhm.
And so I felt I don't want to manipulate people. But then you, Casey, made me aware that I don't need to tell any lies, and I don't need to, convince people. I just need to share my story. This is
Mhm.
inspirational enough. And I just need to be honest about what worked for me. And this made the shift. And then it was actually exciting about sharing my story. And this is how it basically all started. And yeah, and now we have like over 50 people joining the
Wow.
academy, and it's all people who feel the call themselves, who somehow experience the power of sound and who want to work with it on a deeper level. Many people in the process of shifting their careers or shifting their life, where they want to spend more time with things they're passionate about, which is sound in this case, right? And some of them are yoga teachers, or sound healers, or just people who just start to be those kind of facilitators. And yeah, it's been super powerful since they are on this path, on this journey. Like they get offerings to share, they get really empowered. And as you said, it's really growing, and it's really beautiful to see people applying the tools. Like there's a lot of people who work with the chakra template, either in their live performances or in their productions. And yeah, it's just growing, and it's beautiful to see how many people are tapping into this power and using it with that beautiful intention of healing people and bringing people together, for expansion of consciousness, and all those beautiful applications that sound can have.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I was lucky enough to be part of the early stages of that and got to meet some, I mean, still to this day, some of my good friends are people that I met
Hmm.
inside the academy. So Damon
Hmm.
and Frank and a couple of the guys
Hmm.
that were in the early wave, man, that are really still good friends of mine. And so it's a good place to go, especially if you're looking to work with these frequencies, like Stefan mentioned, and you're looking to expand your knowledge on this a little bit more, and just be surrounded by people that are in this world that are looking to expand this a little bit more, and you just want to learn and pick up or share what you've got. It's a great place to be because it's a very supportive community environment, and there's a
Hmm.
lot to learn. There's a lot of conversations going on, both on the, like we talked about, the old, very natural aspect, natural realms, lots of talk about nature sounds, natural instruments, all that. And then there's also talk on the high end about AI and
Hmm.
technology and all that stuff. And really, it really bridges the gap, which is really fascinating to me. And there is
Hmm.
magic that's really starting to happen. What are some of the outputs that have come out of this project that you put together?
Yeah, actually, a couple of things are happening. Like we have, for instance, harmonic resonance as a platform, harmonic resonance music, where the people of the academy are invited to create sound journeys based on different themes, right? So the first theme that we're in right now, but which is coming to an end now slowly, is gratitude, right? So we have a YouTube channel, we have a SoundCloud channel, and an online store where people can license these or just listen to these. And all those journeys have in common that they have been created with the intention, in this case, to get into a state of gratitude, or realizing that gratitude is a very powerful frequency and state to be in order to shift your reality. Because yeah, like gratitude is pretty much in the same frequency realm like love or something like that. It's a very high frequency, and so those journeys have been created with that state of gratitude, but also allowing other people to get into that state and tap into the power of gratitude, and noticing how abundant their life already is in that moment. And then from there, creating more of this, like by being in this appreciative state. And at the same time, they incorporate healing frequencies. They work with solfeggio frequencies, they work with binaural beats, they work with the cosmic tuning, you name it. Like this is part of our ethos, you could say, that the music is kind of cosmically attuned, and it's using natural vibrations and frequencies. So this has come out, and then a lot of the people have created their own releases, like albums, like chakra albums, or some people do their own events now, like they do like online meditations, online sound journeys, and also physical spaces, like um, sound journeys where people can come to, and ecstatic dances and all kinds of things. It's just a lot of activation happening, and you can feel that people start to notice the power of these kind of gatherings, being sober and being more intentional, and working with sound on a deep conscious level.
And it's really fascinating to see because, in that early conversation that you mentioned that we had about, you have the idea behind this, and then we talked about, well, what is your intention behind this? And you said, well, I want to help people create magic with this. And that's been sort of
Mm-hmm.
your brand, is like, let's create magic. And
Mm-hmm.
there's real magic happening. I mean, the music that's coming out,
Mm-hmm.
the events that are coming out, I mean, there's real healing that's happening, and that's magic to me. That's just through this ethereal, substance of sound, of sound waves, but yet, with the intention behind it of what you created, and the people that are in there with you, and then the impact that this is having. I mean, this is reaching thousands and thousands and tens of thousands, hundreds of
Mm-hmm.
thousands of people out in the world now, with this seed that you had planted a couple of years ago. And now, you've got 50 people plus out there doing their thing, all reaching, a number of people. And this is just
Mm-hmm.
amplifying that sound, right? It's almost like an
Mm-hmm.
amplifier for that sound, where instead of before it
Mm-hmm.
was just you or just a couple of people doing this, now that is growing and the sound is getting louder and it's reaching more people. And to me, that's magic. And that's the fruition of that seed that you had planted so many years ago, that is now starting to sprout, and the seeds are starting to reach the fruit phase, and now people are being able to enjoy the fruits of this all over the world, which is amazing. I mean, I had a breathwork session that you shared on your platform, and this was
Oh
like a
yeah.
year ago, that still to this day I get people from Russia and from Africa and from all over the world,
Mm-hmm.
that people that like this track, they go on this breathwork journey for me, that are being
Mm-hmm.
reached of this through your web, your network. And so it's fascinating to see that this is just permeating the entire globe. And to me, that's really inspiring, the magic that's happening there. So congratulations on that, man. It's really beautiful to see.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a beautiful reflection.
And so I wanted to talk a little bit more about, let's get into, you mentioned your partner and the story behind that. I want to hear a little bit more about the story behind you guys meeting. And I know you're there working on her album and a
Mm-hmm.
collaboration effort there. So let's get into that a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more. Tell me about the story about how you guys met.
Yeah. Wow. That's such a fairy tale, man. So yeah, basically, I was at this festival in Colombia, my first time outside of Europe, super excited being on this lineup, the Holy Grail of down tempo. And then one of the performers there, he said, like, actually, I need to say first, I already noticed her, like I was seeing a woman on the dance floor, and she was unlike any other woman. Like the way that she was moving, there was some kind of tribal embodiment, deep rootedness, connection to nature I never saw in a woman before. And there was this glow around her, right? So I noticed her right away. Like I picked up on her among the 250 people who were there. I was like, wow, who's she? Like, that's interesting, right? And then the next day, one of the performers told me, like, yeah, like there's this sound healing shamanic workshop at the beach you should go to. I think you will like it. And I was like, yeah, sure. And then it was her, Maywa. And I was fascinated and enchanted. And I was just like, wow, I would like to work with her, like I was so, yeah, enchanted and deeply touched and yeah, just transformed from this one experience. Like the way that she is tapping into the essence, the way that she is channeling spirits, and the way her purity and her strength and power at the same time. I was like, wow. And at this point, I just started to incorporate like, shamanic singing and, channeling and those kind of things into my music. So I felt this will be a good fit. I just reached out to her and said like, man, I would love to collaborate with you, And she said, yeah, sure. But at this point, she was going through kind of a traumatic experience with her friend cheating on her on that festival. She was not really, she was processing that at this point. And so the festival was over and she went back to Chile and I stayed in Colombia, which is also a very funny story because I missed my flight and had no money. And then I was ending up trapped for half a year at this beautiful retreat center in the jungle, becoming friends with the owner because I played there for New Year's. And then he just adopted me basically, and I was DJing like between 6 to 10 hours a day. But I had the most amazing accommodation in the middle of the jungle in Colombia, close to a river, and he was a star chef koch. So it was amazing time. And during this time, I always kept thinking about her and her music. I was like, man, I still feel we should do something, you know. And then I started looking up her name, and I found her album on Bandcamp, and it was just very pure recordings. It was just her and her shamanic drum singing, or her and the sansula singing, or the koshi, or something, like very little layers. So it was perfect for me to create some edits. So the first thing I did, I felt really inspired when she did the workshop. I was recording the waves of the ocean during that event. So I put that in, and then I added some beats and just, you know, made this edit of this prayer song that she had, and I sent it to her. She's like, wow, that's really beautiful, brother. I'm like, yeah, right. So what do you think? We should collaborate or what? And then she started to send me an a cappella, and I created another track out of that, and she really liked it, and it got released. And then I was like, man, we should meet, you know, maybe we can perform live together. I think that could be really beautiful. And she's like, yeah, okay. And then at this point, I was going back to Germany because then I figured out I did some cacao ceremonies, and I was actually charging the clients. So at some point, I could afford a flight back to Europe. And then she was visiting me in the studio, and it was really beautiful because we had a really beautiful connection. At this point, we both were at a point we don't need a relationship. I was just coming out of a toxic relationship, you know, and she also realized that maybe it's just good to focus on music. And I was even coming out of a fasting retreat, so I was glowing, and I was like only yoga and meditation for 10 days, you know. And so I was in a really good space when I met her, and also not even thinking about a relationship or anything at all, just being super open and excited to work with her. So she stayed in the house I was living in, and we had a beautiful connection from the beginning. After 3 days, we already had 3 songs, you know, because it was just flowing so easily. She had all those chants already in her because she was working for 2 months, no, 2 years in the jungle of Peru with the Shipibo maestras, and she was assisting in ayahuasca ceremonies, but also, yeah, just learning a lot about, you know, like the ancient ways of receiving information from the plants and then channeling that into sound and basically conveying the messages of the plants. So she had all those songs inside her, and I was still like super excited about making music. And so, yeah, after 3 days, we had 3 tracks already. And I also felt a beautiful connection. You know, there was this one magic moment where we were on the computer, and I was going on the mouse and touching her hand by accident. And it felt like electricity running through my body. I was like, wow, what is that? And I was like, I think I have a crush on her, but I cannot tell her, you know, because what we have is so sacred. We cannot fuck that up with a human relationship in the end not working out or something. So I cannot tell her. I will just love her secretly and never reveal my true feelings, sacrificing for the music project, you know. But then on the 4th day, I felt maybe I should tell her, you know, maybe it's good actually for the project being super transparent, you know, being all open, and just she doesn't need to like resonate with that, or it doesn't feel the same, but at least it's out there, and then I can relax, you know. And then I didn't even like, I just thought about it, I didn't say it. And then we wanted to make a recording session, and she had like super strong back pain. I was like, yeah, I can give you a massage, you know. And then from that we went super deep, like I don't know, like the massage started to open up something in her, and she started to open up, and then we started making love on the floor, you know. And then it was like it struck us like a flash of, you know, memory, like this knowing, shit, like we know each other, you know, like for a long time. And now we found each other again, and we had this download of we had this agreement to meet again at some point in this time of shift on the planet, to be this vessel and be this couple that is kind of creating those frequencies and sharing those vibes with the world, you know, to help assist with the shift and with the reconnection of nature. And it was like super magical. And it's like, wow, I didn't expect that. And then the name of our project also, Aluna, is deeply connected to the indigenous people of Colombia, the Kogi. And there's 2 documentaries about the Kogi, and one is called Aluna, the message of the bigger brother, right? Because the Kogi see the white Western people as the small brother, because we have lost our connection to nature. So we're kind of inferior in that sense, and we're not knowing what we're doing. And they managed to live in the mountains for 500 years. Like they could escape, you know, the colonizations, and they had managed to live in harmony with nature for 500 years up in the mountains. But then the glaciers started melting, and they noticed that something was shifting, and they had to come down and tell people that they need to stop. Otherwise, they will destroy the planet, you know. And so these people that are deeply connected to nature, living a very simple life, a very spiritual life. And so because we met in Colombia and because we have this connection, and also in one of the ayahuasca ceremonies we did together, I saw us having a past life as Kogis in a sense. When I suggested the name to her, she just started crying, because I said, like, we cannot let's just call ourselves Steffen and Maywa. We need a project name. What do you think about Aluna? And then she started crying, and she told me it was like I would ask her to marry her. Like that was the kind of same depth and profundity that was coming with that suggestion. So then, since then, we were Aluna, and yeah, we have been together ever since that day. And we've been traveling the world, touring the world. At the beginning, we did a lot of cacao ceremonies. That was like 5 years ago, so it was not that common. Thank God now there's so many facilitators, so many people on that path serving the medicine. Also thanks to people like you who share the connection and wisdom and knowledge and empowering people to work with the medicine. So now we are not working so much in the same capacity like we did, but at the beginning we did a lot of cacao ceremonies, even in clubs and stuff like that. And yeah, I had a beautiful time sharing what Maywa calls the medicine of love. And yeah, we create music together, and we do retreats together, you know, like one-on-one retreats. She is a really beautiful voice activation coach, so she's doing work with people who want to connect with that inner and outer voice, like this expression. And then I help people to create the music or produce the music. So we do retreats where people can, you know, connect with that essence and do something creative. And right now, yeah, we're recording her album, which is super beautiful because it has been in the birthing process for 2 years now. It's called Ama, Ancient Voices. And it's all songs that she has received in our time in Costa Rica. Since COVID, we've been in Costa Rica since March 2020. And she has received so many songs. It's like 15 in total.
Wow.
And she was receiving the guidance also from an astrologer that she had to wait for the right moment, and it will be around March. Funny enough, like how this is all like orchestrated and organized by forces that we're not really aware of, right? We just need to surrender, as you say. So now we are in this amazing studio of a friend, Mose, and it's the perfect place, and it's so beautiful to be able to support her and to witness it. Like yesterday, for instance, we recorded a song called Roots. And just listening to her recording it, my heart was opening so deeply that I felt an amount of gratitude I've never even felt before. And I was just crying. And it's just this purity and this essence and the beauty of the words and the music and what comes through her that I'm super excited to share that with the world. I think it's big medicine, it's big healing in there. And yeah, so we are in the process of that right now.
I can't wait to hear it too, because I mean, just the way you're describing it, but also, you know, the story behind it, where you guys are at. I mean, I know the studio, I know a lot of what Moses created, there's magic in that studio already, and you guys tapping into that energy, especially he works a lot with cacao and that medicine.
Exactly.
And so there's so much there that I can't wait to get my ears around that. Like, yeah, I'm excited about that, man. I hope everybody out there listening is too. So when can we expect that? I mean, not to put any rush on, and you know, we're not about rushing it, but when might this, you know, hit the airwaves?
That's a good question. So definitely this year. The thing is, right now we're just capturing it. So we're just focusing on recording the essence, just the voice and the instruments. She's already reaching out to amazing musicians who add their magic to this, right? So we have like something very pure, very naked and innocent, and there's a lot of space, for things to be added. And again, she is just following the guidance of the songs. Like it's not up to us. Like we are not doing it. We're trying to be open and receptive to what those spirits or those messages, how they want it to be translated, and what they need. We try to serve. And so there will be additional recordings, and I will probably also be the producer. So we are here until the end of the month, and then we have hopefully recorded everything. We are halfway through, I would say. So it kind of aligns with the timing. And then she's going to Mexico on a silent retreat, and I will be in Guatemala, and I want to finish 2 of my new templates are coming up. There's 432 hertz sound healing templates for Ableton. One is a drone generator, which is more simple for people who have Ableton Light. So this is my first offering for people who don't need to have the full version of Ableton. I created something that works in Ableton Light, and it's a drone generator and 432 hertz, and then it's a whole sound healing template called Ether and Earth. And I want to finish that in the time that she's on the retreat. And then we come together going to Europe in May. And then I will start with the production of the album. So it's hard to say, man, but I hope maybe in the summer, definitely maybe the latest in autumn, I would say.
I'm sure we're going to get lots of iterations of that. I'm sure there's going to be some remixes coming from it, and I'm sure
I was even thinking doing a whole remix album, Aluna or Steffen Ki, on that, because it just has so much potential, because we're recording it with a click for the first time. Usually she's always free flowing, but this time we record it with a click, so everything is on time, so I can work with beats and stuff like that.
Yeah, exciting stuff to come. I can't wait to hear it. So tell me a little bit more about what this summer is bringing for you. You mentioned you're going to Europe this summer. So what's on the agenda? Where can people catch you, see you? What have you got coming up?
Yeah, it's really interesting. For the first time since 3 years leaving Costa Rica. One of the reasons was also that the rainy season in Costa Rica can be pretty intense. Like it's raining there for half a year, and it's not the best for the equipment. And we just had this idea, maybe this rainy season we just go to Europe. And once we had this thought, invitations started to come in from gatherings and festivals. So one of them will be the Conscious Celebration gathering in Switzerland, which is a beautiful 120 people, yoga, breath work, ecstatic dance kind of gathering. Sam Garrett will also be there. I don't know, maybe
Nice.
you know him.
Yeah.
Beautiful mantra singer. And so that will be on the 21st of May. And then we're going to be at the Evanes Festival in Hungary, which is on the 23rd of June. Also basically like a conscious festival. So those kind of events we are drawn to and resonate with. And then from there on, it's pretty much up in the air, like we have all like different ideas. I want to go to Italy, for instance. I want to visit the Damen Hur community. I don't know if you've heard about them, but apparently they are super connected to Atlantis, and all those technologies. They work a lot with frequencies. They were one of the first people who researched and created devices that translate plant information into music. So they made one of the first plant music devices. And I'm just curious to be there and to check out and maybe learn new stuff about frequencies. So that's going to happen. And then we will also be in Ibiza in September. And at the same time, I also feel the call to go to Japan for some reason. It's getting stronger and stronger. I really resonate with the Shinto approach, and all those. I think it's going to be very inspiring, and Mount Fuji and the hot springs and the forests and all that stuff. So I don't know, maybe in October or something we will go to Japan, and then in November we will be back in Costa Rica.
Wow, a lot going on. Lots of travel, lots of exciting stuff, man. Lots of beautiful places to see as well. I mean, some of those places you're mentioning, I mean, those are some of the top spots in the world for me. Places that some of them I've been to, but some of them I want to go to. I'm part Japanese. I've never been to
Ah,
Japan. And
really?
so,
Wow,
yeah,
I didn't know that.
my dad was born in Japan. And so I haven't yet
Okay.
been, but I'm waiting to go with the right amount of time. And, you know, I don't want to just go on like a quick trip. I want to go and spend some time there and really get to know it. I've got family
Mhm.
there and stuff. So
Oh, wow.
Japan's fascinating to me. Haven't quite touched that yet, but
Yeah.
excited if you do make it there. Definitely want to hear what comes from that. So,
Yeah.
and then we talked a little bit about before we hopped on, but you've got a for people interested in making their own music and diving into that, or diving deeper into that. You've got a new course that you just put out. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So to give you also a little bit of background information and also share that the journey I'm on is not always just like sunshine and rainbows, you know. I also go through my transformative periods and challenges and dark nights of the soul and death and rebirth processes like we all do. So at this point, actually, like I started the idea like in November and I was almost like paralyzed by anxiety. Um, I was just afraid to put stuff out there because I was comparing myself to others. And for some reason, I thought it's
Mm,
not good enough. Right. And I felt almost like paralyzed. I had this desire to create, but then I was also thinking always, it's not good enough. And so I didn't do anything. And I was just paralyzed and trapped in this kind of, contrast. And then I was like, fuck it, I need something to break the cycle. So then I had this idea to create a creative retreat for myself. And there's this super beautiful place in Costa Rica called Awake, one of the most beautiful intentional communities there. Like I've never seen a project that is so aligned. The brothers that are carrying it, they are such beautiful brothers and they do it with so much devotion and so much alignment and everything is just falling into place beautifully and they're thriving right now. I was still at the phase there where they were still building stuff, but now they're super ready to receive people and it's just blowing up, rightfully so, because it's such a high vibration. The land is magical. There's a river and they really anchor in and manifest this new earth template. It's amazing. Everything there is created with that intention to create this new earth haven, and it's a beautiful community. So I felt the call to go there for a week just to rent a cabin there and be immersed in that with the intention to create an online course. Because I thought, even if I don't create something new, I can definitely share something that I feel confident in and then that process creates something, right? So basically I created an incentive for myself to be creative again, but then also combine that with a higher intention of serving people by sharing the knowledge, right? So basically I was there for a week and it was magical. Everything shifted since then. I never got back into this state of doubt or fear, right? Like when I arrived there, I already felt this, sense of fresh air. And sometimes it's just good to get out of your
mhm.
environment, switch up things a little bit, get into a new vibration. And then this land, of course, was super magical. So in this course of the 1 week, I created very beginner friendly online course on how to create your first shamanic down tempo track, right? So many of the things you already talked about are incorporated there, like this whole idea of the power of intention and, like the power of nature and the sounds. And basically we created a track from start to finish, channeling the energy of the place and then applying the templates and the steps that I've refined and perfected over the last 15 years of my journey as a music producer. So people learn how to create a track from scratch, but it's very beginner friendly, very basic. So I also talk a lot about the software, so the idea is people who maybe never heard about Ableton or open it up for the first time are still able, to understand what's going on, what they need to do in order to express themselves creatively. And the course also comes with a lot of bonus content, like two of my templates, the biggest ones, like the organic shamanic house and the shamanic down tempos. So even if you don't have the plugins that I'm using, you can still draw upon that, and this can kickstart your production and your creative journey because you already have a vast selection of sounds that work really well and they're created within that vibration of nature and healing and shamanic and ceremonial ritualistic music. And so yeah, that is out now. You can put a link in the description or whatever, or you can find it on the website also, harmonic-resonance.com.
Yeah, we'll definitely put a link in the description because I mean, you've got templates on templates on templates. I mean, that's one of the things that, and I've got a template to drop in the Palenque template that
Yeah,
Stefan had a huge impact in helping me put that together and finalize that. My first template that I created when, very similarly when I was living in the jungle and
such an
just wanted
amazing template. Yeah, man, people love it.
to put my inspiration into, in something that I could put out. And so got the Palenque template. We'll drop a link to there. Your shamanic down
For sure.
tempo, your
And they go super well together. There's a lot of
yeah,
people who
yeah.
work together with your and my template, because it's very complementary in a sense. The thing is,
Hmm.
in Costa Rica, the energy is very fairy-like, so it's very light,
Hmm.
and then you go a little bit more deeper, like with the Mayan, culture and all that, frequencies, which are like way more, let's say, yeah, they're going more deeper into the underworld, those kind of things. So it's like a more, how would you describe it? How would you describe the essence of your template?
Yeah, it's a deeper, darker journey into the
Right?
jungle.
Exactly. Deep and dark. Exactly.
Yeah,
So it's a beautiful to combine those two, right? Because
yeah.
mine are maybe a bit light and fairy, and some people they want it a bit darker. They want to go deeper, and so then your template is perfect for that.
Yeah.
It's a
So we'll
great
drop
job
a
you did.
yeah, thank you. We'll drop a descript well, in the description. There'll be links to all those templates. And um yeah, they do work really well together. I have a live set that I've created that's a mixture of them both. So I've got
Hmm.
both them elements of your template and my template that I can weave together, and yeah, it creates a beautiful journey. So last, before we go, I wanted to talk a little bit about, we talked a lot about for people wanting to dive into the music creation side, but for people that are just looking for a little bit of help, a lot of the music that we create can help them. What are some of the practices that they can use, or where can they start to find some music that can help them in their practice? So maybe they're a meditation teacher or a yoga teacher and they want to find some music that they can incorporate into their practice, or maybe it's just somebody that's just a practitioner, somebody that just likes to meditate, that they just want to find some music that can really help them go deeper into that. Where would you suggest that they start?
Yeah, I mean, definitely they can start with our harmonic resonance music SoundCloud and YouTube channel. Like, this is still pretty fresh and new, but we already have a couple of journeys on there. And the thing is, those people who create those journeys, they have also other offerings and other tracks and other music. So you can see that as an entry point and then explore more, maybe listening to a journey that they resonate and see who produced that, go on their SoundCloud and find more of that music. Then also, if you want to have something more with beats in the sense of like more like ecstatic dance kind of music, also really good for yoga practices. The label that I was curating, Numa, Numa, it's a Shipibo expression for love. This is a kind of a platform, a label for organic, shamanic, down tempo, meditation, yoga music. So there's a lot of stuff out there, like hundreds of tracks, and many yoga teachers use that in their classes. So that would be another one. And then, of course, the label from Mose, the Sueño.
Hmm.
So also super beautiful, heart opening, deep journey
Yeah,
music.
shout out to Mose. I love
Yeah,
what he's doing.
of
Yeah,
course.
beautiful
Yeah,
stuff.
definitely. And he also has a masterclass out, by the way. So for those of you who are a bit more verse producers or who want to know how Moses is creating his magic, he has created an amazing masterclass covering everything, like his whole creative process, like including even like live performing and DJing. And he has such a unique approach that's also for me super inspiring, because the way that he arranges his tracks is he's setting up everything in session view, like different sections and stuff, and then he's performing it. So he's getting out of this kind of linear mind state and just being in the flow and just performing, and then recording this performance and then making some edits out of it, right? So he's not like other people and like me, starting in the arrangement and then putting from left to right. He's just like flowing with it, jamming. So yeah, that's super inspirational to see. And yeah, big gratitude to Mose, what he's doing for the world, also with his sharings and offerings. He initiated the cacao dance movement, we could say, right? Like he
Mhm.
started in Guatemala with the cacao
Mhm.
dance, and now with his partner Bruna, also she has Rise Together Cacao, and they are doing those events together now. Beautiful. couple similar alignment with me and Maywa, right? Like they support each other into bringing people together and being connected with nature and opening their heart and receiving the medicine of music and cacao.
Beautiful. I'm on board with that mission. So yeah, man, thanks so much for joining me and for going on this journey. I hope it won't be the last time, man, because I think there's so much still, like, I know I'm gonna come off of this and be like, oh, we didn't even touch on this, or and there's still so much to like that we could get into. We could talk for hours and hours and hours, but
Yeah.
we'll just keep this one where it's at. I really appreciate you hopping on. Is there anything else you wanted to let the people know before we hop off, or any other where people can find you, or anything else you want to promote or anything before we go?
Yeah, most definitely. There's nothing to promote, but there's to share that right now is the time to act on your passion, like whenever you were waiting for like a sign, this is the sign. Like the time we are in right now, the month of March is so fucking powerful, like with the equinox coming up.
Yep.
And the astrology around it is a reset, a moment in human history, or like the history of human consciousness, and clarity arises. And yeah, I hope that the story that I shared could be a little bit of an inspiration for you to act on your passion and to jump into the unknown. Life will reward you big time. Like there's so much magic waiting for you, if you start to act on your passion. And you don't even need to have a big plan or anything, just step by step, just start by being more in that state, by whatever it is. If you like writing or dancing or painting or teaching, whatever, just act on it and do it. And the more you are spending time and energy on it, the more life will create opportunities for you to sustain yourself with it. And Casey's also a good example for that as well. So yeah, if you're not doing it already, now is the time to share your light and act on your passion, and yeah, share your gifts with the world.
I'm inspired. As soon as we hop off, I'm gonna open up live and get in there and start working on some stuff. So
Yeah.
so thank you, man. Thank you so much for joining me, and have a beautiful day. And I can't wait to hear what comes out of the creation there with your partner, and just everything that's coming out of what you're doing, man. I'm always peeping. So thanks for doing what you're doing, and thanks for sharing your story. It really is inspiring to go from where you said the depths of where you first started this journey to where you're at now, and having that inspiring message, man. It's beautiful to see, and it's beautiful to have you in my life as a brother on the path, and somebody out there sharing the medicine of music, and along the path of cacao and all that as well. So we collaborated on a cacao. You collaborated with me on a cacao ceremony a couple of years ago. I want to put that back out. I just saw somebody had left a comment recently, like, hey, where's that cacao ceremony that was part of? So
Exactly.
I want to put that
Yeah.
back out. And so I think I'll re-release that soon. And that collaborative effort that we did with you and Maywa, doing a special sound journey for my cacao ceremony. So we'll put that
Yeah, we
back
can
up.
do that in the future. Like if you plan anything like that again at some point, maybe even in person at some point.
Oh, that would be amazing.
You're still in Mexico, or
Yeah. I'm in San Cristobal right now.
San
So
Cristobal. Okay.
yeah, not too far from where you're at, but
Maywa is gonna be in Mazunte. Is that close to San Cristobal?
no, it's up in Oaxaca. So she's going to
Yeah, okay.
Hradaya Silent
I think
Retreat.
so. Yeah.
Yeah. They have another center here in San Cristobal, actually.
Mm,
They have a second, their second retreat center is here close
okay.
by, but she's going to Mazunte.
Interesting.
But
Yeah.
yeah, man, anytime you're in Mexico, let me know. Let's see if we can cross paths. I'm going to be traveling around. I'm back and forth to Palenque, and I'm always in and out of the jungle. So
Yeah.
but in the meantime, man, yeah, big hugs to you across the airwaves, and we'll catch up soon, man. And yeah, would love to collaborate with you in person, and I think people out there would love to see that too. So thanks for sharing your story, and for everything that you do, man, and for bringing some inspiration to the day today.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me to share. It was beautiful to have this kind of recap. Makes me realize, yeah, how magical it was, and hope that other people can tap into that power as well. We all have it within us, and now is the time.
Yeah, I think other people are feeling it right now. So All right, man. I'm going to stop the recording.